Okay, so I just got finished watching the new Netflix Resident Evil series. This isn't Resident Evil. This is like some sort of I don't know, like a fan fiction or some shit. That like wears the skin suit of Resident Evil, and they'll throw out little name drops or whatever. It's like, oh, well, remember William Birkin? Oh, remember 81? We'll just briefly mention them in like one little Passover line. Oh, remember when Wesker died in Volcano? We'll mention that too. In 2009. But it's not Resident Evil at all. It's its own thing. And honestly, I was more excited for this, kind of sort of knowing that going in, especially from looking at the trailers, because I just don't want to rehash the video games. And that Sony movie that was like the reboot, it was awful. I mean, on paper, it was going to be awful. This is some weird shit, though. And so you kind of just throw away all of your. I think there's a basic sort of canon here that they're going to, but they're doing their own thing. And if you go into that knowing that, I don't think you'll be completely disappointed. But there's no Chris, there's no Stars, there's no Jill, there's no Claire. There's none of that here, and it's basically just using the basic setting and maybe some like monsters and stuff. It's using the rogue gallery essentially and trying to make their own story with it. Now it's told, and basically it's like a dual story. And so there's the stuff that's before the apocalypse, and then there's the stuff that's like post-apocalypse, which is mainly a bunch of action set pieces and things like that. I really thought that the best part of this show was the stuff before the apocalypse, and there's no real horror or tension or much drama here. It's kind of like a character piece, and Albert Wesker is a really interesting character. They flesh him out a pretty good. I mean, well, it goes off in bizarre places that I definitely don't want to go into any kind of spoilers on. But him and his two girls is really the centerpiece and the most interesting part of this story. I don't care too much at all for what happens in the like post-apocalyptic section. I think that almost feels tacked on, even though that's where your most zombie-est Resident Evil kind of stuff happens. But it's one of those things that if you go in knowing that this isn't really Resident Evil, that it's wearing it, it's like a fan fiction, you might get a decent amount of enjoyment here. There's nothing super amazing about this show at all. I don't know if it's a complete waste of your 8 hours, but it's one of those things where at least it's different. And so many things these days are just straight up rehashes and reboots, that this sort of thing that went off and did its own thing, even though it's freaking bizarre, and even though it's not Resident Evil, even though it's pretending to be so, it's really kind of wearing that on its sleeve. You kind of know from the trailer and everything else that this was not even going to try to be, your old school Raccoon City kind of stuff. But overall, I did enjoy it for the most part. Now, I don't think this is an amazing. There's a lot of setups here for like a second season. I don't think this probably needs a second season, but we don't never know about Netflix. I wasn't completely miserable. Is that a good is that a recommendation, Kitty? Yeah, I wasn't completely miserable. Great.